Did you know that the 1970s gave us more billion-dollar grossing songs than any previous decade? Or that some of the biggest hits of the 70s are still streamed millions of times every month, decades after their release? Join us in this video as we take a look at the defining songs of the 70s, a hit from each year. Number 10, 1970, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Simon and Garfunkel.
Like a bridge over troubled.
Songs in music history have the sheer emotional weight of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Released in January 1970, this masterpiece by Simon and Garfunkel is a phenomenal part of music history, a grand sweeping ballad with gospel overtones. It felt like a comforting hand on the shoulder of a world that had just come out of the problematic 60s. Paul Simon originally wrote the song as a simple folk tune, inspired by gospel music, particularly the work of the Swan Silverstones. But when it came time to record, producer Roy Halley and Art Garfunkel pushed for something bigger, and bigger it became. Starting with a delicate piano intro, Garfunkel's angelic vocals soar over a gradually building orchestral arrangement until it reaches a breathtaking climax. The result was a song that felt almost spiritual in its ability to uplift. And talk about impact, Bridge Over Troubled Water wasn't just a #1 hit, it was a cultural touchstone. It topped the charts in over 10 countries, won 5 Grammy Awards, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year, and became one of the best-selling singles of the decade. But here's where it gets interesting. Paul Simon actually regretted letting Art Garfunkel take the lead vocals. He later admitted that he felt left out, even though he wrote the song. The tension between the duo was already bubbling, and just a year later, Simon and Garfunkel parted ways. In a way, Bridge Over Troubled Water was their crowning achievement and their swan song. Even today, it's a song that brings chills, a timeless anthem of support, resilience, and love. What better way to start the 70s than with a song that still makes hearts swell decades later? Number 9, 1971, Imagine, John Lennon.
Imagine there's no heaven.
If Bridge Over Troubled Water was a soothing balm for a weary world, then Imagine was a challenge, an invitation to dream of something better. Released in October 1971, John Lennon's Imagine quickly became more than just a hit. Stripped down and unassuming, the song's simplicity is exactly what makes it so powerful. Just Lennon's voice and a gentle piano melody, and lyrics that hit straight to the heart. No elaborate production, no flashy solos, just words that made people stop and think. Lennon was deeply inspired by his wife, Yoko Ono, whose book Grapefruit featured poetic instructions that encouraged imaginative thinking. In fact, Lennon later admitted that much of Imagine was inspired by Ono's writing, though at the time, she wasn't given official credit. The lyrics advocating for a world without borders, possessions, or religion weren't just poetic, they were radical. Some loved it, some thought it was naive, and others accused Lennon of hypocrisy. After all, he was singing about imagining no possessions while living in a multi-million-dollar estate. But here's the thing, Imagine wasn't just Lennon's personal philosophy. It became everyone's song. It was adopted by activists, played at rallies, and even today, it's performed in moments of global unity and reflection. In 1971, as the Vietnam War raged and political tensions ran high, Imagine became an anthem for hope. Imagine hit #1 in several countries and remains Lennon's signature solo track. Rolling Stone later ranked it as the 3rd greatest song of all time. Even now, whether it's sung at a tribute concert, played at a major event, or performed in a quiet moment of reflection, Imagine remains one of the most universally recognized and deeply affecting songs ever written. Can you think of a song from the 70s that's been covered, quoted, and referenced as much as Imagine? Probably not. And that's exactly why it defined 1971. Number 8, 1972, Lean on Me, Bill Withers.
Lean on me when you're not strong.
Some songs don't just stand the test of time. They become part of the very fabric of our lives. Lean on Me by Bill Withers is one of those songs. Released in 1972, this soul-stirring anthem of friendship, resilience, and human connection was an instant classic. It topped the Billboard Hot 100, but believe it or not, it didn't dominate the charts for as long as some might expect. Still, its impact, undeniable. From the moment those warm, gospel-infused piano chords kick in, you know you're in for something special. And then comes Bill Withers' voice, rich, unpolished, and deeply authentic. He didn't just sing the lyrics, he lived them. The song wasn't about flashy production or vocal acrobatics. It was raw, simple, and real, which is precisely what made it so powerful. Bill Withers wrote Lean on Me based on his childhood in Slab Fork, West Virginia, a small coal mining town where neighbors took care of each other. He later moved to Los Angeles, where he found success as a musician. But he never forgot those roots. He once said, "In the place where I grew up, when things got tough, people would help each other out. That's where this song came from." And you can feel that sentiment in every note. The song's message of unity and support resonated across generations and cultures. It became an anthem for movements, a playlist at graduations, funerals, and even political rallies. And unlike many hits that fade with time, Lean on Me has been covered, sampled, and reimagined countless times. Whether by Club Nouveau's upbeat 1987 version, or in gospel choirs around the world. The song's influence goes beyond music. It became a universal message of kindness, a reminder that no matter how strong or independent we try to be, everyone needs a helping hand sometimes. And when those famous words play, "Lean on me when you're not strong," it's almost impossible not to sing along. Bill Withers might have been a reluctant superstar, often shying away from the spotlight, but with Lean on Me, he gave the world a song that would never fade. So, what was the next defining song of the decade? Well, 1973 turned up the heat, because when Marvin Gaye stepped into the studio, he wasn't just making a song, he was setting the mood for generations. Number 7, 1973. Let's Get It On, Marvin Gaye. Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye is easily one of the most sensual songs from the 70s. Released in August 1973, Marvin Gaye didn't just record a hit, he created the gold standard for romantic slow jams. This was more than a love song. Let's Get It On didn't start out as the sultry, iconic track we know today. Initially, it was a spiritual piece, but when the songwriter Ed Townsend heard it, he suggested it would be better as a sensual, passionate, deeply personal expression of desire, love, and emotional connection. Gaye and Townsend rewrote the lyrics to the masterpiece we know today, and the song was simply perfection. The smooth, melting guitar intro, the gentle but irresistible groove, the way Gaye's voice drips with pure emotion. Whether he's whispering or belting out those iconic high notes, he felt every word, and you believe him when he sings it. It was also groundbreaking, in an era where love songs were either sweet or heartbreakingly tragic. Let's Get It On was unapologetically about physical love. It was bold, it was raw, and it was revolutionary. Unsurprisingly, the song exploded on the charts. It shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it Gaye's biggest pop hit at the time. And decades later, it's still everywhere. From movies to TV shows to wedding playlists. And, let's be real, probably a few first date playlists too. Let's Get It On became the ultimate soundtrack to romance. But here's something not everyone knows. This song was deeply personal for Gaye. Around this time, he had fallen deeply in love with Janice Hunter, a woman 17 years younger than him, who later became his second wife. That real-life passion fueled every note of Let's Get It On, and you can hear it. Marvin Gaye was already a legend, but this song cemented his place as the voice of sensuality in music. It's a song that has stood the test of time, a defining anthem of the 70s, and quite possibly the smoothest track ever recorded. But while Let's Get It On was heating things up, 1974 took us in an entirely different direction. Because next up, a group of Swedish superstars took Eurovision by storm, and the world was never the same. Number 6, 1974, Waterloo, ABBA. there was ever a single moment that launched a band from obscurity to global superstardom, it was Waterloo at the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest. Before this, ABBA was just another struggling Scandinavian group trying to break into the mainstream. After Waterloo, they were unstoppable. But let's rewind. When ABBA entered Eurovision, they weren't just hoping to win. They were aiming to change the competition. Up until then, Eurovision had been dominated by traditional ballads and tame pop numbers. ABBA came in with a glam rock explosion, glittering outfits, a high-energy performance, and a song that was as infectious as it was groundbreaking. And what a song it was! Waterloo wasn't just catchy, it was revolutionary for pop music. It combined 50s rock and roll influences, a pounding, almost military-style beat, and harmonies so tight they soared over the music. And the lyrics, comparing love to Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Waterloo, absolute genius. The moment ABBA stepped on stage at Eurovision, it was over for the competition. They won in a landslide, instantly turning themselves into international superstars. And that was just the beginning. Waterloo topped charts across Europe and even cracked the American market, something few Eurovision winners had ever done. It hit the top 10 in the US, and before long, ABBA was on its way to becoming one of the biggest pop groups of all time. Even today, Waterloo is the perfect Eurovision song. In 2005, it was even named the best Eurovision song of all time during the contest's 50th anniversary. Not bad for a couple of Swedes who just wanted to shake things up, right? And while Waterloo made ABBA stars, with our next entry from 1975, music history was about to be rewritten by a song so ambitious, so theatrical, and so unlike anything else on the charts that it left audiences completely stunned. Number 5, 1975, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. What do you get when you mix opera, hard rock, and one of the most dramatic vocal performances ever recorded? You get Bohemian Rhapsody. A song that didn't just push the limits of rock music, it shattered them entirely. Released in late 1975, this 5-minute masterpiece was Queen's magnum opus, the brainchild of one man, Freddie Mercury. He had a vision, an extravagant, genre-blending masterpiece that would take listeners on a journey through sorrow, rage, defiance, and pure musical ecstasy. The problem? No one thought it would work. Think about it, back in 1975, singles were supposed to be short, radio-friendly, simple. Bohemian Rhapsody was none of those things. It was practically a rock opera in miniature, starting with a melancholic ballad, transitioning into a full-blown opera section. With multi-tracked harmonies so complex they took weeks to record, exploding into a head-banging rock riff, and then finally fading out with a haunting whispered farewell. The record label hated it. They wanted a radio edit, but Mercury refused. So how did it become a hit? Enter one legendary DJ, Kenny Everett. He played the full song on London's Capital Radio, and the response was insane. Fans demanded the song be released as a single. Queen's label had no choice but to give in. And once it hit the airwaves, it blew up. Bohemian Rhapsody shot to number 1 in the UK, staying there for an incredible 9 weeks. It became Queen's signature song, solidifying their status as rock gods. And when Wayne's World featured that now iconic headbanging scene in 1992, a whole new generation rediscovered the song, sending it back into the top 10, nearly 2 decades after its original release. The fun fact is that Mercury never fully explained the song's meaning. Over the years, fans and scholars have tried to decipher its cryptic lyrics. Is it about a man confessing to a crime? Mercury's struggle with his own identity? Or is it simply a grand theatrical work with no deeper meaning? Brian May himself once said, "Freddie never explained the lyrics, but I think he put a lot of himself into that song." Regardless of its meaning, Bohemian Rhapsody remains one of the most groundbreaking and beloved songs of all time. It defied every rule of commercial radio, proving that music doesn't have to fit a mold to be successful. And just when you thought the 70s couldn't get any more iconic, the next defining song brought us one of the most recognizable intros in pop. Number 4, 1976, Dancing Queen, ABBA. If Bohemian Rhapsody was theatrical rock at its peak, Dancing Queen was pure, euphoric pop perfection. The moment that shimmering piano glides in, you know exactly what's coming. A song that has soundtracked countless weddings, parties, and dance floors for nearly 5 decades. Released in 1976, Dancing Queen wasn't just ABBA's greatest hit, it was the defining song of the disco era. This wasn't a song you listened to, it was a song you felt. A song that made you want to move, sing along, and lose yourself in the music. And that was precisely what ABBA intended. But here's the interesting part. ABBA wasn't aiming for a full-blown disco track. Inspired by the grooves of George McRae's Rock Your Baby, Benny Andersson and Born Jovius wanted a song that blended elegance with a danceable beat. And wow, did they deliver. When it comes down to just the music, Dancing Queen is flawless. The lush, sweeping strings, the rhythmic pulse of the piano, the way Agnetha and Frida's voices melt together in perfect harmony. It's impossible not to sing along, and that chorus, it's practically designed for the dance floor. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. If that doesn't make you want to get up and move, check your pulse. Lyrically, it's deceptively simple but brilliantly universal. The song isn't about a specific person, it's about a feeling, that magical fleeting moment of youth and freedom, when the world is yours for the taking. And that's exactly why it resonates with generation after generation. The song became an instant monster hit. It topped the charts in over a dozen countries, including the US, marking ABBA's first and only #1 hit in America. But beyond the numbers, Dancing Queen became immortal. It's been played at every major event celebrating the 1970s, covered by countless artists, and even performed by ABBA for the King of Sweden on his wedding day. Yeah, actual royalty danced to Dancing Queen. And decades later, it still holds its magic. Whether it's blasting at a party or playing during a Mamma Mia sing-along, Dancing Queen is more than just a song. It's joy bottled in 3.5 minutes. But just when disco seemed untouchable, 1977 arrived, and one song changed everything. Number 3, 1977, Stayin' Alive, Bee Gees. No song captures the soul of the disco era quite like Stayin' Alive, and honestly, has there ever been a cooler opening than that instantly recognizable guitar sound? By 1977, disco was dominating, but Saturday Night Fever and Stayin' Alive took it to an entirely new level. The film's soundtrack, packed with Bee Gees hits, became the best-selling movie soundtrack of all time, and Stayin' Alive was the centerpiece. Did you know that this song almost didn't happen? The Bee Gees were in a tight spot. They'd been successful, sure, but they were struggling to find a new sound. Then came their move to Miami, their collaboration with producer Albie Galutin, and their embrace of disco, and boom, Stayin' Alive was born. The bass line on Stayin' Alive pulses like a heartbeat. The rhythm feels like an unstoppable force, and Barry Gibb's falsetto, pure magic. But here's something mind-blowing. That drum beat, it's not actually a live drummer. The Bee Gees and their team created the track by looping a single bar from another song, Night Fever, because their drummer had left mid-recording, and yet it became one of the most famous beats in music history. Lyrically, Stayin' Alive is deeper than people realize. While it's remembered as a disco anthem, the words paint the picture of urban struggle. Lines like "Life going nowhere, somebody help me" weren't just about dancing. They reflected the gritty reality of 1970s New York. The Bee Gees later said they wanted the song to have soul, not just be about partying, but about survival. Stayin' Alive hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming one of the 3 Bee Gees songs to do so from Saturday Night Fever. But its legacy is so much bigger than its chart success. It became a symbol of disco, a cultural landmark, and believe it or not, a life-saving tool. Seriously, studies have shown that its tempo of 100 beats per minute is the perfect rhythm for performing CPR. Paramedics literally trained to this song. But beyond all that, Stayin' Alive is just incredible. Its swagger, confidence, and rhythm, all wrapped up in one legendary track. The Bee Gees didn't just define disco with this song, they made it immortal. And just when you thought the decade couldn't get any wilder, 1978 arrived, and a group of mustachioed men in over-the-top outfits delivered one of the most famous party anthems of all time. Number 2, 1978, YMCA, Village People. Some songs are just fun, some songs are iconic, and then there are songs like YMCA, tracks that become so legendary they transcend music and turn into cultural phenomena. And let's be honest, who hasn't thrown their arms up in the air to spell out YMCA at some point? Weddings, sporting events, nightclubs, karaoke bars, you name it. This song has been there, and that's because YMCA is more than just a disco anthem. But here's the crazy part. When the Village People released YMCA in 1978, they had no idea it was about to become one of the biggest songs of all time. Written by Jacques Morali, Henry Bololo, and lead singer Victor Willis, the track was meant to be a celebration of the Young Men's Christian Association, a place where, according to the lyrics, you can find something to do, somewhere to stay, and a way to get yourself clean. And let's be honest, by the time the song hit the clubs, it had taken on an entirely new meaning. The Village People were the kings of campy, larger-than-life disco, and YMCA was their crowning achievement. With its upbeat melody, infectious chorus, and perfectly choreographed dance moves, it dominated the airwaves. It reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went platinum in multiple countries. But more importantly, it became a permanent part of pop culture. And the dance, believe it or not, it wasn't even originally part of the act. The iconic YMCA arm movements were actually created by fans at a show, and the band just went with it. Next thing you know, a simple disco track had turned into the ultimate crowd participation song. And here's a fun fact. YMCA is so universal that in 2020, the Library of Congress officially added it to the National Recording Registry, cementing its place as an essential part of American history. But as the 70s came to a close, the music world was about to get a serious wake-up call. Because while disco was still ruling the charts, a new wave of rock was brewing. One that was punchy, raw, and impossible to ignore. And in 1979, that revolution had one defining song. Number 1, 1979, My Sharona, The Knack. Disco may have been king in the late 70s, but when My Sharona exploded onto the scene, it was like a grenade thrown straight into the middle of the dance floor. With its ferocious opening guitar riff and relentless energy, My Sharona was simply phenomenal. It was the song that launched the Knack into superstardom overnight, single-handedly brought new wave rock into the mainstream. But here's what makes this song so fascinating. It wasn't calculated to be a hit. In fact, it was inspired by a real-life crush. Doug Fieger, the band's lead singer, wrote it about Sharona Alperin, a girl he was completely obsessed with. He was 25 and she was shockingly 17, and he basically wrote the most unapologetically infatuated love song of all time. And guess what? It worked. Sharona later became his girlfriend. Musically, My Sharona was electric. The moment that iconic guitar riff hits, you know what's coming. The pounding drums, the raw vocals, the irresistible chorus, it was everything rock was meant to be. And when it dropped in 1979, it annihilated the competition. My Sharona spent 6 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, became the biggest single of the year, and gave the Knack a debut album that sold over 1 million copies in just 2 months. But while the song was massive, the Knack never managed to match its success. They were unfairly branded as a Beatles knockoff, and critics turned on them just as quickly as fans embraced them. The band fizzled out, but My Sharona never did. It's been everywhere, from reality bites in the 90s to Super 8 in the 2010s. And just like that, the 70s were over. Disco had dominated, rock had rebelled, and the decade had left us with some of the most unforgettable songs in music history. So what's your favorite defining song of the 70s? Did we hit all the right notes? Or is there a classic that deserves a shout out? Drop your picks in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap on that notification bell for more amazing videos like this.